Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Stéphane Isoard. I'm head of group for freshwater and marine activities at the European Environment Agency, and I would like to thank you for inviting the European Environment Agency to this conference. What I would like to do in the next few minutes is to give an overview of water and the European Green Deal and the EU legislation to set the scene for your conference. And that's important, in my view, in order to work towards finding solutions to the environmental problems we face, and also important to involve stakeholders and communities in designing these solutions and implementing those. First of all, I would like to say a word about the European Green Deal. As you know, that's the first priority of the current Commission, and this has never happened before. This is a huge and unique opportunity for all of us in Europe to implement solutions and take forward the environmental agenda. It is actually made of a series of initiatives, as you very well know, which are systemic, which are integrated one with another. And that's really important to note because that's also quite new. And very importantly, the European Green Deal and the initiatives, they look at designing and pushing forward solutions to the environmental problems we experience. Beyond assessing the state of nature, it actually put forward some new targets and push all stakeholders to develop solutions, which is also a step forward, a very significant step forward. As you know, beyond the EnvironmentalIQ, the European Green Deal includes the Biodiversity Strategy for 2030. It includes, together with that, the Farm to Fork initiative. I will come to these in details later on. It has also a package on zero pollution, which has been recently adopted, together with a chemical strategy, which was adopted in September last year. And all of these links very closely to the circular economy package, the Sustainable Finance Initiative, and also the Climate Change Law, which has also been progressed, both in terms of mitigation, but also in terms of impacts and adaptation to climate change, which are important topic in relation with water, obviously, for example, water scarcity and droughts issues. The EnvironmentalIQ continues in its own right, of course, together with the European Green Deal. And I would like to mention that beyond the Water Framework Directive, which went through fitness check recently, the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive has gone through evaluation. There's an impact assessment being developed at the moment. You are aware that the Drinking Water Directive has been recasted. There's a new version of it. The Bathing Water Directive is under evaluation since February. The Sewage Sludge Directive is also under evaluation and review. And you will also know that there is a water reuse regulation, which has been recently adopted as well. All this package of the EnvironmentalIQ, of course, continues, and that's very important to keep that in mind together with the new initiatives of the European Green Deal in order to design these solutions and implement those. I would like to take a few minutes to talk about the biodiversity strategy for 2030. First of all, to mention the first pillar, which is very much about protection of land and seas. The ambition here is raised from 10% coverage of 10% of protected areas, which was the IC 11 target under the CBD, to 30%, a target of 30% across Europe. And 1/3 of these 30% would be strictly protected. That's a huge step forward. And this is quite significant in the biodiversity strategy that has been adopted last year. The second pillar, which is of importance, is about restoration. Of course, there is currently some talks to develop a legally binding instrument on the topic with some targets, and some impact assessment are being developed in order to assess these and define these targets, which would allow us to assess the health of ecosystems across Europe. These targets are new, actually, and go beyond the EnvironmentalIQ as reflected by the Water Framework Directive, for example, or the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. In the European Green Deal, there are already some targets which have been included in relation to freshwater. This includes, for example, the target of having 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing rivers across Europe. The target also to decrease by 50% the sales of antimicrobials for farms and aquaculture, and also the target of decreasing by 50% the amount of pesticides being used in Europe. Of course, all of these having, again, a close and direct link to freshwater and the quality of water bodies in Europe. The Farm to Fork initiative, which is a very close complementary initiative to the biodiversity strategy, looks at the food system as a whole and tries to push forward the item of sustainable consumption and production, looking at the supply chain and looking also at the consumption patterns. Here specifically, there are two targets linked to water, and in particular the decrease of 20% of fertilizers being used in the food processing chain, and also decreasing by 50% the nutrient losses. Again, that's quite significant new targets. And in addition to this, I should mention that also there's a target to have at least 25% of the land implementing organic farming in Europe. As mentioned before, in addition to this initiative, there is a zero pollution action plan, which has been adopted a few weeks ago. And it has also a number of indicators in order to monitor the progress in implementing zero pollution for air, water, and soil in Europe. Here, a number of indicators have been pre-selected, and it includes the status indicators stemming from the Water Framework Directive. It includes also the reporting from the Bathing Water Directive and the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. And it really aims at monitoring for example, the amount of nutrients in fresh water. These initiatives I've mentioned now, they are significant, very important, and there will be monitoring frameworks put in place. And the European Environment Agency is actually involved in designing and developing these monitoring frameworks for the next few years under the umbrella of the 8th EAP, the 8th Environmental Action Programme. I would like to spend some time also talking about the EnvironmentalIQ, because as you know, the third river basin management plans are planned to be reported by March 2022. Again, that will be a very useful update to the previous reporting exercise, and we will better know the state of water bodies across Europe. In addition, the Bathing Water Directive is under evaluation, as I mentioned before. The idea here is to expand the number of parameters which are covered by the directive. You know, at the moment, it's only 2 parameters. It doesn't fully reflect what the health of bathing waters should be. So that's the idea with the evaluation of the Bathing Water Directive. Also here, the further use of Copernicus products is being investigated, and that would allow us to also have data which is more consistent across time, but also across the space, across member countries in Europe. The Drinking Water Directive, as I said, has been updated. And here there is a new data reporting element. It's called data harvesting, by which countries will be asked to maintain at national level a system with the latest information about drinking water in the country. And there's a simplification of reporting being brought about with this Drinking Water Directive recast initiative. That will also significantly change the way we do reporting at EU level, in the sense that usually reporting is centralized on our system at the European Environment Agency, which is called ReportNet. In the case of the drinking water, it's decentralized, and it's called data harvesting, and that's a significant technical change going forward. Most probably this way of collecting data is going to be implemented across more directives in the future. I would like to spend some time now talking about the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, because it is under impact assessment now, and with the objective of improving the reporting under that directive, especially in relation with water reuse, for example. Water reuse for agriculture purposes, of course. But I want to highlight the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive impact assessment because actually it was a technical directive that narrow in nature, but because of the push of the European Green Deal, now it includes many more items are being considered in the impact assessment for designing a new Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. And that's quite significant because a lot of issues linked to circular economy is being considered and is being included in the work. I want to mention in particular, the use and the production of energy by urban wastewater treatment plants. That's an area for which we have very little information. So that's being considered together with the use of sludge, for which also we would like to have more information, together with the recovery of raw materials from the sludge. That's directly links to the circular economy objective of the EU, and also the water reuse that I've mentioned before. In addition to this, there are a number of issues linked to pharmaceutical and antimicrobial resistance, which is being considered as well, together with the monitoring of the COVID-19 pandemics. As you may very well know, the urban wastewater treatment plants have been used in order to monitor the COVID-19 pandemics, and this will most probably be strengthened with the review of the directive. In addition to this, there is also consideration of the non-connected dwellings across Europe and the impact it has on the environment, and also the implementation of nature-based solutions. The directive traditionally has been very technical, as I said. However, in some areas of Europe, going with a very technical approach is not, it might not be the best option. So the directive, or at least the impact assessment currently being done, also consider nature-based solutions. So I wanted to take a bit more time on the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive because I think for me, it is a good example of how the push of the European Green Deal can actually be implemented through the reviews and deliver more ambitious and more systemic and integrated new directives for Europe. The last point before closing is about digitalization. I think that's a very important element to keep in mind. I'm not going to spend much time here to talk about it, but the way we monitor the environment when it comes to water in Europe, the way we implement solution will be influenced quite a lot by the digitalization progress and development. I'm thinking especially here about the Earth observation and Copernicus products, which can be further used, and also about artificial intelligence or machine learning, which actually help us better understand the trend in the data being collected, but also allow us to do better projection scenarios for the future. So there's again here a huge and promising potential because of digitalization. I'd like actually to close at this point. I hope this overview was very useful. I think it is important to understand the policy context because it's the context within which solutions are being designed and implemented. It's very important for communities to be involved. As you have understood, of course, and you know, the European Green Deal and the EnvironmentalIQ represent a unique and huge opportunity for member states and all stakeholders to integrate further water issues and to further push the solutions in order to address protection and restoration of water bodies in Europe. There's also an interest here to co-create between stakeholders. That's also something at the European Environment Agency we are considering more and more in order to help designing solutions. At the European Environment Agency, in that context, we are committed to deliver trusted and actionable knowledge, and this is really our mandate, and we are very much involved in the different elements and issues I've been presenting previously. So I'd like to close here. I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the conference and the very interesting discussion, and also to the outcomes stemming from the conference. Thank you very much again.